The sun scorched the concrete at the SWAT training ground in Austin, Texas. Jessica Taylor stood alone, surrounded by 20 male candidates, sweat clinging to her temples as the lieutenant's voice cut through the air. "This place is not for you." Some chuckled. One guy stuck out his foot as she stepped forward, sending her gear crashing to the ground. Phones came out. Laughter echoed. Jessica knelt silently to pick up her equipment. As she rose, her jacket slipped slightly, revealing the edge of a silver military medal tucked into her inner pocket. For just a moment, one heartbeat, her eyes locked with the lieutenant's. Cold, steady, calculating. They thought they were humiliating another unqualified woman. But what they didn't know was that they just provoked the wrong sharpshooter. Now, ask yourself, if you were in Jessica's place, what would you do? A1. Walk away knowing you don't belong yet. D2. Stay, and let your actions speak louder than their doubts. Type 1 or 2 in the comments. Your choice says more than you think. Comment below 1 or 2. Let's see how many would choose the hard road. Jessica Taylor lived in a quiet East Austin apartment, modest, spotless, with a single locked cabinet no visitor had ever seen open. She was 34. No social media, no dating apps, no parties. Just her routines and 2 framed photos on the wall, one of her parents at her college graduation, and one of a military unit in Afghanistan taken a week before everything went sideways. Daughter of a high school math teacher and a night shift nurse, Jessica had grown up steady, invisible, and wildly underestimated. After college, she joined the Army as a logistics specialist. At least that's what her paperwork said. What it didn't say. She had trained some of the deadliest shooters in the 5th Special Forces Support Group. And when she came home, she tried to leave all of it behind until a 911 call changed everything. But if you think she came to SWAT for the thrill, you're about to find out what really brought her here. Most people at the department thought Jessica applied to SWAT because of politics, diversity quotas, PR headlines, a token. They couldn't have been more wrong. 3 years earlier, she'd held her best friend, another female soldier, bleeding out in a simulated exercise gone horribly wrong. Miscommunication, poor training, a rookie mistake by someone who never should have passed. Jessica had watched her die not from enemy fire, but from neglect within the system. That night, she made a silent vow. If no one else was going to fix the pipeline, she would. Back in Austin, she traded her rifle for a headset, taking 911 calls. For a while, it was enough, until the school shooting. Jessica kept an officer alive remotely, talking him through creating a tourniquet, organizing backup, holding her voice steady through gunfire. That was the moment she realized. She couldn't change the battlefield from the sidelines, and that's why she signed the form. But not everyone believed she deserved to. Jessica never asked to be noticed. She asked to be prepared. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., while most of the city still slept, she laced up her running shoes and hit the pavement. 3 miles in silence. No music. Just breath and discipline. Then back to her 1-bedroom apartment where the 2nd bedroom had long been converted into a home gym, bare floor. No mirrors, just weights and a pull-up bar screwed into the doorframe. She trained alone. Ate the same breakfast. Logged every rep. Same routine she followed in Afghanistan. No one saw her. That was the point. At the department, she kept her head down. The others joked that Jessica Taylor didn't exist outside of work. She never corrected them. The fewer people watching, the easier it was to move. But just because she stayed quiet didn't mean she wasn't watching. And when the tests came, Jessica wouldn't ask for fairness. She'd be ready for war. It was a Tuesday morning when Jessica walked into Magnolia Cafe, the only place she treated herself to breakfast during SWAT training. She was tired, sore, focused. Then she heard it. At the corner booth sat half a dozen officers laughing loudly over greasy plates. One of them, Detective Parker, was telling a story. Her story. So Rogers says, if you can't handle the weight of the gear, sweetheart, how are you going to drag a 200-pound man out of a firefight? You should have seen her face like a deer in headlights. Laughter exploded. Jessica froze by the counter coffee order and hand breath caught in her throat. Parker's eyes finally met hers. The table went silent. She didn't say a word. She paid, nodded politely, and walked out. In the car, the coffee sat untouched as she gripped the wheel knuckles white. Her metal pressed cold against her thigh. They had no idea who she was, but they'd find out, one bullet at a time. At first, the congratulatory smiles felt real. "Way to go, Jess. You're gonna crush it." But then came the silences. Conversations in the dispatch break room stopped when she walked in. Laughter dried up, eyes shifted. And that supportive tone, it turned brittle, too bright, too forced. One afternoon, she overheard it in the parking lot. "She's making us all look bad. This SWAT fantasy. It's insulting. Like dispatch isn't good enough anymore." Jessica said nothing. She just walked to her car. When she booked time at the firing range after hours, suddenly there were team-building events or birthday reservations. Every slot she tried taken. Nobody confronted her. Nobody needed to. The message was clear. Stay in your lane. She was still part of the department, technically, but she'd never felt more alone in uniform. And soon the instructors would make it official. Captain Reynolds didn't bother hiding his disdain. A decorated Marine chest full of medals, head full of old-school rules. He called her ma'am like it was an insult. And during every training scenario, he made sure Jessica knew exactly where she stood. Dead last. During a live simulation, he assigned her a faulty radio. When it cut out mid-exercise, leaving her disconnected from her team, he shrugged. "That's a dead squad, Taylor. Start over." The men got replacements instantly. Jessica got blamed. In hallway drills, Sergeant Hayes singled her out. "See that hesitation? That's how you get hostages killed." They made her carry the battering ram 40 pounds of steel alone under the Texas sun for hours. No rotations, no breaks. When she faltered for half a second, Hayes barked, "You want to be the reason civilians die." No one spoke up. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one stopped it. And the worst part, they weren't done with her yet. Week 4. Jessica showed up early, gear prepped, mind-focused. But the bulletin board said something new. Updated qualification standards. The obstacle course cut by 30 seconds. Minimum pull-ups doubled. A surprise weapon disassembly test never mentioned before. Captain Reynolds smiled thinly. "Chief's orders," he said. But everyone knew who the target was. During the assessment, male candidates who struggled got encouragement. "You've got this. Reset and try again." When Jessica stepped up, the instructors walked away, clipboards in hand, already writing her off. She gritted her teeth. 11 pull-ups. Then the 12th arms, shaking, eyes burning. She didn't drop. The course. She finished with 3 seconds to spare. The disassembly test. Years of combat maintenance kicked in. She passed. Every single standard. Captain Reynolds stared at the score sheet like it had betrayed him. "You barely made it," he muttered. Jessica looked him in the eye. "Barely is still passing, sir." But even success didn't buy her a moment of peace. Jessica passed every test. But there were no congratulations, no nods, no relief. Just more silence. That night she sat in her car in the underground garage, still in uniform. Her hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her eyes were closed, but not to sleep, to keep the tears from falling. The voices from the day replayed on loop. The looks, the smirks, the silence that shouted. She reached into her pocket and touched the cold metal of her medal, the one no one ever asked about. Awarded in a valley far from Texas for a mission no one here knew existed. She thought about quitting, about disappearing. That would have been easier. But then her phone buzzed. A message from her sister. The day you give up is the day they win, and it's not just about you anymore. Jessica exhaled slowly. Not peace, not clarity, but resolve. Tomorrow she'd show up again. A week later, the email started. At first, just one or two from female officers in other cities, then dozens. "I heard what you're doing. They say you haven't quit. Keep going. We're watching." Jessica didn't know how her story had spread. She hadn't posted, hadn't spoken to reporters, but word travels fast when you're breaking barriers that weren't supposed to break. They weren't cheering for her name. They were cheering for the possibility she represented, and that terrified her more than failure, because now, quitting wasn't just personal. It meant letting down the women who thought maybe, just maybe, they could be next. She stared at her laptop one night, messages flooding in. Officers, recruits, even cadets, all waiting to see if the door would stay shut or if she'd kick it open. Jessica didn't want to lead, but she couldn't stand by while others waited in silence. Final qualification week. The atmosphere at the SWAT training facility had changed. No more jokes, no more side comments. Just tension. Thick, pressurized, unspoken. 12 candidates remained, Jessica among them. But this time, she wasn't just being watched by the usual instructors. Chief Wallace showed up. So did Deputy Chief Morris. Even representatives from the city council. They all claimed it was routine. It wasn't. Everyone knew. This wasn't just a test. It was a verdict. Captain Reynolds addressed the group, barely hiding his satisfaction. For today's firearms assessment, he said, "We've brought in a course designed by Military Special Forces consultants." The room shifted. Everyone sat up. Multiple targets, changing distances, limited time, stress variables. He paused, looked straight at Jessica. "This will separate the operators from the tourists." Scattered smirks. Jessica said nothing, but her hands flexed slightly at her sides. Not nervous, just calculating. She'd trained people who built these courses. Now it was her turn to walk through fire. One by one, the male candidates stepped up. Targets popped, timers beeped, commands barked. Some handled it well. Clean shots, sharp transitions. Others, not so much. Missed targets, jammed weapons, hesitation. Still, they got pats on the back. Not bad. Solid run. Close enough. Jessica stood at the back of the group, not stretching, not pacing, just watching. Her expression unreadable. Her breathing slow, measured. Her hands still, relaxed, ready. Every few minutes another candidate stepped off the course huffing, shaking out arms, pulling off gloves. Some confident, some clearly rattled. They glanced at her, some with pity, some with expectation. She gave them nothing in return. She was running the course in her head. Over and over. Angles, cover points, trajectory estimates, no wasted energy, no outward emotion. Because when it was finally her turn, she wasn't planning to prove herself. She was planning to break the system. "Taylor, you're up." Lieutenant Rogers called her name with a smirk. Several instructors exchanged glances. One even leaned over and whispered, "$10 says she hits less than half." Jessica didn't respond. She just walked. Every eye followed her. Command staff, instructors, candidates, even the ones who used to mock her, were quiet now. She stepped onto the course platform. The sun hit her face. The air was dry, but her hands were steady as stone. She checked her weapon, deliberate, efficient, mechanical. No flare, no drama, just readiness. Her thumb hovered over the safety. She closed her eyes for half a second. Those nearest to her thought they saw her lips move. A breath in, a memory, a moment of something deeper than focus. She reached under her collar and pulled out a leather cord. At the end hung a small, worn military medallion. She kissed it once and tucked it into her pocket. Then the buzzer sounded, and Jessica Taylor moved. Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots, 3 hits. Center mass, center mass, center mass. The murmurs stopped. The smirks vanished, and the clipboard pens paused. Jessica advanced. Her movements weren't flashy. They were surgical. Every transition low and clean. Every corner sliced with precision. No wasted motion, no second guesses. from kneeling to prone, from left cover to right angle. She flowed like someone who had done this 1,000 times under fire. Her grip, textbook. Her footwork, military tight. Target after target fell, and when her weapon jammed conveniently halfway through, she cleared it in 2 seconds flat, never losing rhythm, never blinking. Lieutenant Rogers leaned forward. Chief Wallace finally stood up. The other candidates no longer whispering, no longer betting. They were watching. Because whatever this wasn't luck. It was legacy. Jessica wasn't competing anymore. She was commanding the range. The final target stood at the far end of the course, a near impossible shot with the standard-issue handgun. Jessica adjusted her stance, exhaled slowly, and fired. Dead center. The buzzer beeped. The scoreboard flashed. New record. Time 12 seconds faster than the previous best. Accuracy 100%. Silence fell like a curtain. Captain Reynolds checked the numbers again. Then again. His jaw clenched. Chief Wallace turned to his deputy, said nothing, but his face, tight, unreadable, spoke volumes. The clipboard crew stopped writing. The candidates, those who'd laughed, bet mocked, now stared in something between disbelief and awe. Lieutenant Rogers was the first to speak. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Jessica ejected her magazine, cleared her weapon, holstered it, then turned. Her voice was calm, precise. "Army marksmanship instructor, 5th Special Forces Support Team. I trained the people who designed this course." The range stayed silent. Captain Reynolds stiffened. Chief Wallace blinked once. Slowly, Deputy Chief Morris leaned forward, visibly unsettled. Jessica stood calmly, no gloating, no bravado. "Just truth. I listed it in my application," she said. "My full record was there. You just never read past the word dispatcher." No one spoke. A few of the male candidates exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some looked at their boots. Others looked at her like they were seeing a ghost. The instructors shifted on their feet. Because in one sentence Jessica had revealed everything wrong with the system, they hadn't tested her fairly. They'd never bothered to see her at all. Chief Wallace finally cleared his throat. "Why didn't you tell us earlier?" Jessica met his gaze. "Because I thought this program measured what we could do, not what we said we could." And with that, she walked off the range. She didn't need to drop the mic. She just dropped them. By evening, the footage had already spread. What started as private chatter among officers turned into shared clips in encrypted group chats. Then someone no one knew who leaked it to the press. The same local news outlet that once questioned should standards be lowered for women now ran a new headline: "Former military instructor destroys SWAT course record." Within hours, Jessica's name was trending on law enforcement forums. Reporters began digging. What they found? Commendations. A Silver Star. Her role in rescuing 3 soldiers under live fire in Afghanistan. None of it had been mentioned in her police personnel file. Not once. By the next morning, the phone at Chief Wallace's office wouldn't stop ringing. City council members, civil rights lawyers, the mayor's press secretary, everyone wanted answers. And the department, suddenly the same people who tried to push her out, were scrambling to claim they'd supported her all along. 1 week later, Chief Wallace held a press conference. With cameras flashing and microphones lining the podium, he smiled like a man delivering good news. Today, he announced, "We welcome Officer Jessica Taylor as the newest member of our SWAT team. Her performance reflects our commitment to excellence regardless of gender." Polite applause. Smiles for the cameras. What he didn't mention, the emergency meeting held the night before where legal counsel warned the department they were one discrimination lawsuit away from a PR disaster. What he didn't show, the internal memos, the hurried updates to her file, the backdated commendations added overnight. Jessica stood beside him stone-faced. Not angry, not triumphant, just aware. She knew what this was: damage control. Not growth, not remorse, not yet. Still, she let them have their photo op. Because what mattered wasn't the press conference. It was the door she had just kicked open and who might walk through next. A week after the press conference, something unexpected happened. Anonymous tips began arriving at Internal Affairs. Emails, screenshots, forwarded memos. A pattern emerged clear, undeniable. Documents showed that Lieutenant Rogers had quietly altered application standards for female candidates over the past 3 years. Subjective scoring, sudden fitness revisions, discrete disqualifications. No one had spoken up before, but now Jessica's performance had pulled back the curtain, and once the curtain fell, others finally stepped forward. One by one, officers came forward with stories they'd kept buried of unfair treatment they'd witnessed but felt powerless to stop. Some were ashamed. Some were angry. Some simply said, "We should have said something sooner." Rogers was reassigned within days, stripped of his command. Desk duty. Equipment inventory, not justice, but a signal. The rules were no longer safe from scrutiny, and silence was no longer an option. After her first official SWAT team meeting, Captain Reynolds pulled Jessica aside. His posture had changed less chest out, more chin down. For once, his voice held something close to respect. "We'd like you to lead marksmanship training," he said. "You've clearly got the experience. The department could benefit." It was a fast track to authority, command, influence, prestige. A year ago, Jessica might have accepted, but now she simply shook her head. "I appreciate it, Captain, but I didn't go through all of this to be the woman in charge of shooting. I came here to be part of the team." He blinked, taken aback. It would have been easier to lead from above. But Jessica knew that's how they kept her in a box, even if the box came with a title. She hadn't broken through just to be repackaged. She wanted to earn their respect the hardest way possible as their equal. Reporters came calling. Talk shows wanted her. Documentary producers emailed offering airtime. Jessica declined them all. She wasn't interested in headlines. She was interested in infrastructure. Quietly, she scheduled a meeting with the department's HR director. No fanfare, no announcement. Just 2 cups of black coffee and a notebook filled with observations. She outlined specific training gaps, gender-based discrepancies, and scenarios that consistently pushed out qualified candidates under the guise of standard protocol. Her suggestions weren't loud. They were surgical, practical, tactical. She didn't ask to rewrite the system overnight. She offered ways to fix it from within. By the end of the month, several of her recommendations were implemented quietly. No public credit, no press release, and that was fine by her. Change that lasts doesn't come with applause. It comes with blueprints consistency and someone willing to stay when no one's clapping. It didn't happen all at once. There was no aha moment, no big group apology. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the air shifted. One day, after target practice, a teammate tapped her shoulder. "Your stance. Mind, showing me how you stabilize that left side." Another morning she arrived to find a fresh spot cleared for her gear. No jokes taped to the locker this time. Even Detective Parker, the one who once laughed about her application in public, stopped her in the hallway. He looked uncomfortable, like the words had gravel in them. "I was wrong about you," he said. "Most of us were." Jessica nodded. Nothing more. Then she said softly but clearly, "Let's make sure the next woman doesn't have to break records to be taken seriously." He nodded back. Wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was the start of something better: accountability. Jessica didn't start a mentorship program to prove a point. She started it because someone had to. Every Thursday evening after her shift ended, she stayed behind. No cameras, no sponsorship, just space mats and targets. She taught female officers how to shoot under pressure, how to move through doors with confidence, how to stand steady under scrutiny. It wasn't about lowering standards. It was about raising readiness. When a senior officer questioned it, called it special treatment, Jessica invited him to observe a session. From behind a pane of glass, he watched women train harder than most recruits. Run drills, repeat reloads, get better, sharper, stronger. "I'm not asking for leniency," Jessica told him. I'm building resilience. Because the standards aren't the problem, the preparation is. 2 weeks later, the department quietly integrated her methods into the academy's curriculum. No credit given. She didn't need it. She wasn't doing this for applause. She was doing it so no woman ever had to walk alone again. 6 months into her SWAT assignment, the call came. Hostage situation. Downtown office building. 10 floors up, 14 lives inside. One man with a semi-automatic weapon. The suspect was an ex-employee, angry, armed, unpredictable. As the team geared up, tension filled the truck. Jessica stayed quiet, eyes locked on the building schematics. She noticed something. A narrow service corridor unmarked in the primary entry plan ran behind the target's position. A flanking route. Silent, clean, unused. If we stage a distraction at the front entrance, she said we can send one operator through here. The team leader glanced at her skeptical, then double-checked the layout. He nodded. Jessica wasn't assigned the flank, but her strategy saved lives. When the suspect saw movement out front, he never saw the second officer come in behind him. No shots fired. No hostages harmed. Surrender clean. Afterward, during debrief, Captain Reynolds said just one thing: Taylor's tactical read saved lives today. That's the standard. No qualifiers, no footnotes, just recognition earned, not granted. The debrief room felt different that day. No one avoided her eyes. No one held back words. Instead, when Captain Reynolds finished his statement, there were nods. Real ones. No sarcasm, no grudging acceptance, just quiet professional respect. One of the newer guys, someone who once rolled his eyes every time she walked in, offered her the last cup of coffee. It wasn't a big gesture, but it said everything. They weren't treating her like the woman on the team. They were treating her like a part of the team, not a novelty, not a statement, just a colleague who'd earned her place. Jessica didn't say much. She never did, but inside something shifted. Not pride, not relief, just the steady, quiet feeling of ground beneath her feet, finally solid. And that feeling, she would spend the rest of her career making sure others had it too. Jessica never campaigned. She never asked to lead a movement. She simply refused to quit, and people noticed. Other departments started reaching out, quietly at first. An email from Dallas. Would you be open to speaking with our training division? A message from San Diego, heard about your methods. Any chance you'd share your onboarding structure? Some calls came late at night from female officers who spoke in hushed voices. I want to try for SWAT, but I'm not sure I'll survive the culture. Jessica answered every message. Not with speeches, not with slogans, but with frameworks, drills, tactical tips, mental prep. The same tools she had to build herself brick by brick in isolation. She didn't call herself a mentor, but she became one. Not by standing in the spotlight, but by lighting the path quietly so others could walk it without fear. 6 months later, 2 new female candidates entered the Austin SWAT training cycle. No headlines, no political statements. Just 2 recruits, nervous but focused, stepping into a space that once tried to crush Jessica Taylor. But this time, it was different. There were no mocking glances, no locker room pranks, no princess tiaras taped to their gear. The instructors, professional, measured. The male recruits, competitive but respectful. During a break, one of the women fumbled a reload drill. A male trainee started to chuckle. His teammate elbowed him. Cut that out. That kind of talk doesn't work here anymore. Jessica watched all of it from a distance, arms crossed back against the range wall. She didn't say a word. But inside, something swelled. Not victory, not ego, just a quiet truth. The door she fought to crack open had stayed open, and now others were walking through heads high, not bowed. One afternoon, after a long day of tactical drills, Jessica noticed one of the new female recruits lagging behind. She stayed on the range after everyone else had packed up, failing to perfect her stance. Her frustration was written in every movement, too rigid, too fast, too self-conscious. Jessica didn't shout across the range. She walked quietly, stood beside her. "You're pushing with your shoulder," she said softly, "not your core." The recruit looked surprised, nervous. I can't seem to get it right." Jessica didn't correct her. She adjusted her stance gently with a hand at the elbow and one at the hip. Then she stepped back. "The hardest target," Jessica said, "isn't the one on the range. It's breaking through the limits people place on you before you even start shooting." The next shot, dead center. The recruit didn't thank her with words. She thanked her with consistency. From the upper catwalk of the training facility, Deputy Chief Morris watched the scene unfold. He'd said little during Jessica's rise, approved her paperwork, sat through meetings, rarely spoke her name. But now he watched as a new generation, men and women alike, trained under a culture she had reshaped. No shortcuts, no lowered bars, just focused technique and earned confidence. He saw the way the recruits listened when she spoke, leaning in, not out. He saw the way mistakes were corrected without mockery, how learning had replaced humiliation. Another officer approached him quietly. "She's turning them into operators." Morris nodded. "She's doing more than that," he said. "She's turning this department into something better. No cameras, no applause, just an acknowledgement years too late but real." Jessica hadn't just joined the system. She'd updated it line by line. It was nearly midnight when Jessica stepped onto her apartment balcony, the city quiet beneath her. She pulled out her phone, hesitated, then called her sister. The line picked up almost instantly. "Vanessa," her sister said, half asleep. "Everything okay?" Jessica leaned against the railing, eyes on the skyline. "I'm not calling because something's wrong," she said. "I just needed to tell someone. I think it's working." There was silence on the other end. "Then, tell me." Jessica exhaled slowly. "There are 2 new women in the program. They're not getting harassed, they're not being mocked, and the team, they're backing them, teaching them, listening." Vanessa's voice softened. "Because of you?" Jessica shook her head, half smiling. "No, because I refused to leave long enough for them to see what staying could do." Another pause. "You sound..." "Lighter," her sister said. Jessica looked up at the stars. "I'm still standing," she said, "but now. I'm not standing alone. It wasn't a major op, no hostages, no headlines, just a routine high-risk warrant in a known gang territory. Standard protocol, entry team, backup team. Perimeter. Jessica was assigned to perimeter. But just before rollout, the team leader looked around and then looked at her. "Taylor," he said quietly, "you've done this before. Run the entry door with me, no stripes, no vote, just instinct, trust, respect." She nodded once. Inside the van, no one blinked. No snide remarks, no side eyes, just small adjustments, quiet readiness. During the breach, it wasn't her accuracy that mattered. It was her timing, her calm, the way her voice cut through the comms when another officer froze under fire. Left clear. "Move forward. I've got your 6. And he moved because she said so. After the suspect was secured, no one clapped her on the back. They didn't need to. They handed her gear. And they handed her trust, the kind no uniform could demand, only earn. It was a warm morning at the academy range. Jessica stood in front of a group of new recruits, half listening, half intimidated. Not by her medals, by her presence. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. As she demonstrated a room entry technique, her shirt shifted slightly, revealing a flash of silver hanging from her neck. A recruit raised a hand. "Ma'am." "Is that a medal?" Jessica paused, took a breath. She reached up and lifted it fully into view for the first time in public. Silver. Weathered. A Combat Valor Award. It belonged to a friend, she said quietly. She died because someone on her team wasn't properly trained. The recruits fell silent. Jessica let the moment hang, then continued. "Every time I teach you something, I'm honoring her. So when I say get your angles right, when I say practice until it's muscle memory, no, it's not about perfection. It's about someone's life on the other side of that door. The medal wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder, and now a beacon. The trainee sat on the edge of the practice mat, breathing hard, eyes glassy with frustration. She had just failed a timed clearance drill again. 3 missteps, 1 jam, 1 panic breath that shattered her focus. Around her the others whispered. Some pitied, some judged. She pulled at her vest, ready to rip it off. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this," she muttered. Jessica didn't call her name, didn't kneel, didn't soften her tone. She simply walked over, crouched beside her, and said, "You failed that drill. Not because you're weak, because no one taught you what to do after failure." The trainee looked up, blinking. Jessica nodded at the mat. "Try again, but this time fail forward, and fix it 1 second faster." She didn't promise it would be easy. She just stayed, beside her, silent, present. And when the trainee stood, shoulders trembling but upright, Jessica didn't smile. She nodded once. Because resilience isn't clapped for, it's recognized. Late one afternoon, Jessica lingered at the edge of the training range. The sun cast long shadows across the concrete. The same space where not too long ago she'd been tripped, laughed at, underestimated. She used to leave this place with clenched fists and a burning chest. Now, she watched 2 recruits, 1 male, 1 female, running drills in sync, correcting each other, encouraging, competing without tearing down. Another trainee practiced reloads under pressure, the same drill that had once been set up to make Jessica fail. Only this time, there were no sabotage tactics, no whispered bets, just sweat, effort, growth. Jessica leaned against the fence arms, crossed expression unreadable, but quietly full. This wasn't a victory lap. This was something better. The battleground had become a launch pad. Not because the institution changed on its own, but because one woman refused to break and turn the system into something worth surviving. That evening, Jessica sat alone in the locker room, quiet, cool, still. Her gear was packed, her weapon cleaned. The day was done. But something lingered. On the wall nearby, someone had taped up a list of recent training top scores. Her name was still at the top, time unbeaten, accuracy unmatched. But she barely looked at it now. Instead, her eyes drifted to the whiteboard beside it, covered in names, notes, scrawled reminders from the newest recruits. One message stood out. 1 more rep, 1 more round. If she could do it first, we can do it better. Jessica stared at that line for a long time, not with pride, but with understanding. She hadn't cleared the path to be praised. She cleared it so no one else would have to explain why they belonged. She rose, slung her bag over her shoulder, and turned off the lights. The legacy she was leaving behind wasn't a story about her. It was a story about what's possible when someone stays long enough to change the ending. The invitation came in a plain envelope. Jessica opened it expecting another routine memo. Instead, it was from the State Tactical Oversight Committee, requesting your leadership during the upcoming statewide SWAT readiness assessment, not as a participant, not as an observer, as a lead instructor. The room would be filled with top-performing officers from across Texas, veterans, commanders, sharpshooters, and they wanted Jessica Taylor to set the tone. No one added, "We need a woman on the panel." No one used the word representation. They asked because no one else could teach what she knew the way she taught it. She walked into the prep briefing wearing the same black uniform as everyone else, no medals, no rank on display. And for the first time in her career, the room didn't pause. It opened. She wasn't a novelty anymore. She was a reference point. When she stepped to the front of the room to speak, they didn't see the woman who made it. They saw the professional they trusted to show them how. The workshop ended. Officers filed out chatting about tactics, comparing notes, energized. Jessica stayed behind, clearing whiteboards, erasing diagrams. Footsteps approached. Slow, heavy, purposeful. She turned to find an older officer, late 50s, graying temples command patch faded by time. He didn't offer his name, didn't try to impress, just stood quietly for a second before speaking. "I've been with this job 29 years," he said. "Saw things change. Saw things stay the same when they shouldn't have." Jessica said nothing. He looked down, hands in his pockets. "I watched a lot of good people pushed out, and I stayed quiet, not because I agreed, but because I didn't think I could change it." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "But you did. You did what some of us were too tired, or too afraid, to try." He paused. "Thank you. For not leaving, for staying long enough to force the rest of us to wake up." Jessica nodded, her voice quiet. "I didn't stay to make a point. I stayed to make it better, and in that moment, no rank mattered. Only the truth between two soldiers who knew how hard standing still can be when the whole system wants you to sit down." It was early. The range was empty. No instructors, no clipboard, no scoreboard. Jessica stood at the starting line of the same course that once changed everything, where she broke the record, where silence turned into respect. But today, she wasn't here for any of that. She loaded her sidearm with the calm of routine, clipped her vest, and whispered something under her breath. Not a prayer, just a name. Elena. The teammate, the friend, the sister-in-arms who never made it home, who died in a training accident that shouldn't have happened, whose death had started Jessica's entire fight for better. Jessica saw her again now, just for a second. That crooked smile, the scar near her eyebrow, the way she'd hum while cleaning her weapon. They'd shared a tent in Kandahar, 1,000 whispered fears, and one impossible promise. If one of us gets out, she makes it count. Jessica didn't sprint the course. She walked it step by step. Each target, one clean shot. No adrenaline, no applause, just precision. And when she finished, she removed the medal from around her neck, held it tightly, and stood in silence. Not to grieve, to honor. Because everything Jessica had built, every inch of progress, every door opened, was a promise kept to someone who never got the chance to walk through it. After a long day on the range, the recruits packed up their gear, their boots dragging with fatigue. Jessica stood near the weapons locker, wiping down her rifle, when one of the younger trainees approached. She looked barely out of the academy, bright eyes, fresh patch on her shoulder nerves she hadn't learned to hide yet. "Ma'am," she asked softly, "can I ask you something?" Jessica nodded. "After everything you've been through, why are you still here?" The question hung in the air. Not hostile, not doubting, just honest. Jessica paused, thought for a moment. She could have said a dozen things: duty, loyalty, habit, momentum. But instead, she looked the recruit in the eye and said quietly, "Because I still believe in what this can be. Not what it was, not what it had failed to be, but what it still could become, with enough people willing to stay, fight, fix, and lead." The recruit nodded slowly, as if something inside her had settled, then Jessica. She turned back to her gear. No speech, no lesson. Just the truth, passed down, one quiet answer at a time. The sound of drills echoed across the range, boots hitting gravel, weapons cycling, voices calling clearances. Jessica stood at a distance now. No clipboard, no command roll. Just hands in her pockets. Boots planted, eyes steady. Before her, a new class of recruits moved through the same course she once walked alone. But this time, no one laughed. No one filmed in secret. No one questioned why a woman was there. She saw focus in their eyes, support in their teams, and confidence that hadn't come from luck but from structure, sweat, and someone who stayed long enough to change the rules. Someone like her. A trainee turned to glance her way, just a flicker of acknowledgement. Jessica gave the smallest nod. That was enough. She turned to leave the wind at her back, the future in front of them. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. It builds. It clears paths. It holds the door open until someone else learns how to keep it open. And now it's your turn. A. 1. Will you wait for change to come? B. 2. Or will you stay long enough to build it yourself? Drop 1 or 2 in the comments, because someone out there is waiting for your answer to start their own.